Hi, this is Marc Balcer, Chief Architect of TAME. In the next 7 minutes, I'm going to show you how you can create this whole suite of executable tests without any complex coding and without having to write each test one by one. This is TAME Test Automation Made Easy. All right, let's jump into this. I'll do this quick demo using something you're probably familiar with, a login page. Now, I've already installed the TAME Excel plugin. Let's begin by going into Excel and creating a new workbook using the TAME template. I'll name it Login Page, since that's what I'm testing. Now, the login page has two inputs, the user ID and the password. Clicking the Login button is the event that triggers the login behavior. Now I need to partition the inputs into different choices of characteristic values that lead to different results. I could have a good user ID that names a real user in good standing, or I could enter a user ID that doesn't name a real user, or I could try something that's not an email address. And finally, I could try leaving that field blank. For the password, I have three choices. One is the right password for the user, another is the wrong password, and a third choice is to leave the password blank. Now, the other part of building tests is to define the expected results. One result, of course, is a successful login. We get there by entering a good user ID and a good password and clicking the Login button. Notice how we mark the cells to say which choices lead to this result. We call this X marks the spot. Another result could occur if we enter the user ID of a user who does not exist. In this case, we don't care about the password, and so we make no selections for the password. Here are some more results. We have a good user ID, but the wrong password. That'll lead to an error. Likewise, we can have errors for entering a user ID that's not an email address, leaving the user ID blank, or leaving the password blank. Each of these has its own set of choices that lead to the result. All right, let's generate some tests. I'll hit the Generate Test button, and you'll see that we have 6 different scenarios. Each one of these is defined in terms of its starting point, in this case the login page, plus its inputs, the triggering event, and the expected result. Of course, these descriptions are nice, but I'd really like to have real values. So to define values, I create a set of columns for each input. Notice how I'm using an Excel formula to insert the input name. Using a formula means that if I change the name of the input, I won't have to change it in 2 places. Now this example is pretty easy. I'll have a real user named Gary at tametest.net, and a non-existent user named Charlie. I'll make up a value that's not an email address, and then I'll use a special keyword to denote a blank or empty value. Now I'll generate the tests again. You'll see that it's still the same 6 scenarios, but now we've chosen values to use. By the way, since I'm writing the values in an Excel spreadsheet, I have the whole formula capability available to me. If I'm working with numbers, I can define ranges and pick random numbers in those ranges. I could do data lookups. I can even create string values via regular expressions. But these scenarios still read a bit stilted. They're not as smooth as if I wrote them by hand. Fortunately, I can write Excel cell comments like these. I can even use templates so that the actual values are substituted into the directions. These templates even support formatting for numbers, dates, times, and so forth. Comments like these can also be used for describing result checks. Here's an interesting case. Because we don't want to give away who has an account with us, we want to show the same error message regardless of whether there's no user with a user ID or there is a user but the password is wrong. I'll combine the 2 column headers and then write a single comment for the combined columns. Now I've written all the comments. If they're hidden, you'll see little red markers in the corners. It's time to generate the tests. All right, now see how the comments make the scenarios a whole lot clearer? Now when you look at these scenarios, you might be wondering about cucumber, that given, when, then notation, sometimes referred to as Gherkin. Now that I have readable directions, I can hit the Generate Gherkin button and get a Gherkin feature file. Remember that Gherkin is intended to be a human-readable format for designing scenarios. I can review these with my team to set the scope of a feature and to get agreement before development and testing begin. Also, Lots of automation tools work with Gherkin feature files. In this demo, I've opened it in Visual Studio, where I could use SpecFlow to create automation. Now here's why TAME is a great complement to Cucumber. Even if you're using a Cucumber-based tool to create automated tests, you still have to write all those scenarios one by one. With TAME, there's no copy and paste repetition. You can create as many scenarios as you need. But if you're doing web testing, you can do Selenium-based UI automation right here in TAME. To do that, you'll need to add a Run tab where you'll add the Selenium automation instructions. There are rows for each of the inputs, events, and checks, plus rows for instructions to be run when setting up or tearing down each test or the whole test suite. If you update your workbook, you can just hit the Run tab button, and TAME will add new rows as necessary. I'll first fill in the URL that I want the test to open. That's the URL of the login page. Then I'll fill in instructions for entering the user ID, password, and clicking the login button. Now this really isn't as hard as it looks. If you record some actions with Selenium IDE, you can just copy those instructions over to the Run tab. So I've added all the instructions for checking the results. Now I hit Generate and Run. This opens up the TAME runner. All my test cases are listed here on the left. The steps and the instructions for the first test are shown here on the right. I can choose to run these tests on any of my installed browsers and in different window sizes. Now I'll click Run, and you can see the test run. So as these run, you'll note how the target of each instruction is highlighted in blue. TAME is building a log with screen snapshots every time an instruction is executed. All right, we're done. The result is logged in the bottom panel, showing that all 6 tests passed on the platform. We can double-click the row to open the log. Now you can upload the log to share the results with your team. And when it's time to add new features, just update the workbook and get your new and changed tests. Now you really need to see TAME in action in order to see how you can do this for yourself. There's a lot more on our website, including some more detailed demos, and when you're ready to try it out for yourself, sign up for a free trial license. Testing can be a beast, but you can tame the software testing beast.